Thanks, everybody, and thanks to VBI, thanks to the entire conference for having me here. I'm from the New York office of Twitter, and I'm not a designer. Don't work in design at all. I work on sponsorships, particularly around video and multimedia on Twitter, which, as I'll show you here, is a relatively new thing for us, but now something that's all over the website. I'll show you a few different examples. Some of the examples I'll use will come, again, not from the world of design, but from the world of sports or entertainment. And I hope that you can then see how they apply into the world of design with some examples I've collected with colleagues from all over the world. So to start, I want to just remind everybody that until really recently, this was the experience on Twitter. Here's a guy, Carson Storch, who's a professional mountain biker, does extreme bicycling tricks and things like that, pretty well followed athlete. And here's him tweeting. This is kind of the classic Twitter experience. Where he's tweeting that he's just done a trick. He says, just did the swaggest 3-whip, which is a kind of bicycle trick I've ever done during a solo sesh. Now I'm that guy that claims while riding alone. So it's like classic Twitter. He's using lots of shorthand. He's trying to fit everything in here to the 140 characters. He's trying to share a moment where he's probably just done this on his bike somewhere remote, and he's saying there's no one around to share it with, so he's tweeting it out because he's excited. So it's like the classic Twitter experience. We come to like take that for granted now. So fast forward to current Twitter, and here's the same guy sharing the same experience, but with sight, sound, and motion.
3, 2, 1. Storch.
I warn you, you might get dizzy.
I talked a little bit earlier. Right, those ones to start with first. On that. Here we go.
The mountain goes on forever. And the interesting thing is that that's still Twitter. And the things that make Twitter Twitter in 140 characters are exactly the same things that make it Twitter with sight, sound, and motion, and with multimedia. And that is that it's public, so this guy's able to share out in the desert when he's done this trick for the first time and he wishes someone had seen it. He's able to share it with all his fans, with bicycle fans, etc. Same with the video. Anyone can see this video on Twitter. Anyone can follow anyone on Twitter. It's real time. There's this sense of speed in both instances. I just did this trick. He's still got the enthusiasm of the thing happening. The brevity of the message helps him get it out quickly. In this case here, you've got the video coming off of the GoPro camera that he's wearing, and he's able to get it out as soon as the trick is over. Conversational fans are able to cheer along as he's doing it and reply and respond, which is part of the nature of it being public, which makes Twitter unique in that regard. And then mobile, and I have it kind of as its own thing. It's a different sort of adjective here, but the mobile piece of this is really key because we're now in a world where the phone is really just this kind of perspective device where with the world of 140 characters, that point of view and that perspective was feeling like you're there with the person. Now it's the same thing in terms of video. So not only is it about making small things bigger, like you saw with that video, it's about making huge things really small and bringing you into the point of view of the person who's experiencing it. And the lens, the frame, the window into all this is the phone, is the end user's fan phone. So to give you an idea of just how important the mobile part is in thinking about how you design an experience for people on Twitter, just some stats here. First of all, just the amount of time people spend on their phones. This is kind of obvious. This might seem high to some of you, might seem really low to some of you, more obsessive compulsive types like me. And then on Twitter specifically, 80% of our usage is on mobile now. This keeps going up too. And then even more remarkably, even though there was no such thing as mobile video until fairly recently, 90% of the video watched on Twitter is watched on mobile. So the whole idea of creating video for Twitter means thinking about that perspective that the person has when they're watching the phone. What is their window into your world going to look like? So the theme of this kind of whole presentation and talk is what happens when you go beyond 140 characters. So I'll go through a few different examples here of different kinds of media, not just video, but photos, animated GIFs, and then a bunch of different kinds of video. And some of them, as I mentioned, will be examples from other areas, and some will be examples from the world of design that I've been able to pull together with colleagues and by word of mouth. The interesting thing that also fits into this, and kind of again with the theme of perspective, is that regardless of the source of the video, and there's an increasing kind of proliferation of devices that can create video or audio or photos or GIFs, et cetera, the goal is to make it, it's all the same to the user. It's going to be invisible to the user, whether it's a Vine, which is a company that Twitter acquired a couple years ago, those 6-second looping videos, whether it's a stream off of TV, which I'll show you an example of in a second, going into the phone, whether it's a stream off a GoPro camera. The end user doesn't care. They just want to see that frame into the world in their phone in a really fast way and a really compelling way. So that's another kind of theme that you'll see coming through here. So photos. Here's an example of, here's a Twitter designer in the UK who really is into business cards. He kind of collects business cards and interesting designs of business cards. You see here him praising this one in particular. They injected a photo of where this person's entire business card is simply their email address with their Twitter and their website. So it can be just, if you search around on Twitter for design conversations, these kinds of things are happening all the time. Hey, I just came up with this, check it out, what do you think? Designers talking to each other, even for something as simple as a business card. Here's something we see more and more of is kind of product advanced views on things. And here's an example from Nike where they didn't want to preview the whole sneaker, so they took this kind of, again, new kind of perspective, interesting point of view, giving the person a different angle on exactly what they're going to be seeing. And here's an example from Vibia, another good example of perspective where you see a little bit of an optical illusion in terms of, is this a convex object, is it a concave object? It piques your curiosity in terms of what this is and what makes you want to take another look. So GIFs. This is something that also is pretty new on Twitter. Until about 6 months ago, actually getting an animated GIF, multiple frame photo to play on a phone was a really technically difficult thing to do. So no longer the case. And so you see things like this from Burberry, where you have to really pay close attention to see which part of the actual image is moving. This is using a combination of an app called Cinemagram and animated GIFs in Twitter that lets you isolate one particular object in the photo to draw the attention in there. Here's a really clever use of an animated GIF. Again, business cards. Again, I got this from our designer in the UK who's obsessed with business cards. Here is a user, Bianca Knopp, who is a designer, and her company is called Wildfire. And here's her business card where she takes graphic design into actual making it tangible. And because it's a GIF, it'll loop here. Another use of GIFs, you see the little hand in the upper right-hand corner. It's a good example of a product reveal. It's an Aston Martin product reveal. The director of the new James Bond movie there is pulling it off. When you see this photo in mobile or on a desktop, if you drag your finger or your cursor across the screen, you can actually see this playing backwards and forwards, or you can stop. So you can imagine all sorts, this is a brand new thing. You can imagine all sorts of different uses of this, where maybe objects appear or disappear. Maybe an object is deconstructed and reconstructed as you pull it backwards and forwards. And so for the fan on their phone, it's a really engaging experience. Video, which is kind of the core of what my team works on. I'll show you a few examples there. So Vine, as I mentioned, there are a bunch of different kinds of video on Twitter, and the goal is to make them, regardless of the source, as easy to consume on the phone as possible. Here's a great example of, you could imagine this being done for any kind of product, something called the Kicks Cam, which we worked with the NBA on, where you get this 360 view here of LeBron James's signature shoes. On another piece of the fashion world, here's the same kind of thing at a red carpet ceremony, where you get the 360 view as well. And because it's a Vine, it's going to loop. So we have people, again, getting a different perspective on what's happening. They may be watching this event on TV, or they may be wishing they could be there. And this gives them another window into what is happening there, and something that's very mobile friendly. Here's another example that's kind of the full body version of it, which we've seen used in a number of different contexts, in particularly fashion, as you might imagine. Here's the Vine booth, we call it. which looks sort of like an airport security thing, but it's got an apparatus on it that takes an iPad or a notebook and takes it around the person and shoots this vine as it goes. I'll actually do that before I play this because there's lots of audio. So probably the most compelling and most famous use of Vine in the kind of design world is designers and creators using Vine and using different kinds of Twitter mobile video to highlight different products. Here's one from Megan Signoli, who's one of the more popular and famous Vine creators, makes her living off of doing this, creating these spots for brands.
Leaving means there's nothing left to try.
So that's all shot in a phone. It's all shot in a phone with stop motion. So tapping, tapping, tapping for each frame there. So the end result is it ends up appearing like magic. Obviously, if it's created on a phone, it's probably going to be better to consume on a phone as well. Here's another one from Megan Signoli. Just incredibly painstaking work to create this kind of magical illusion of motion. So another form of video which we're working on, and again, a place where my team works a lot, where it deals a lot with sports, is, as you might imagine, live and instant replays. And for this, the impression we wanted to create was so you're watching TV, you're watching your favorite sporting event. Here's MotoGP, which will get loud in a second, so I'll talk over it for now. You have your phone open, you're tweeting along with it, you may be reading news about the event. The idea is that we wanted to have it feel like the TV was tweeting video into your phone as you're watching it, as you have it open. So injecting video directly into the conversation. So it's a company called Snappy TV that we acquired about a year ago that has this amazing software that actually captures the live feed, whether it's a broadcast feed, whether it's a satellite feed, whether it's a live feed off of a camera or something like that, and pulls it into a browser. You don't have to download it into Final Cut or After Effects. You don't have to re-export it and upload it. It actually pulls it into a browser, server-side editing. You can chop up the video and tweet it out, publish it to any number of platforms. Obviously, a lot of the use we find of this is in sports, but I'll show you an example here of how this could apply to the world of design. This is the same tool that we can use to export animated GIFs, those touchable kind of different effects that you've seen. I'll talk a little bit about what specifically my team does in this context in case anyone's interested. So I mentioned I do sponsorship, so this is what it looks like in the form of a sponsorship. The big event is happening on TV. MotoGP is tweeting out this clip using Snappy TV right as it's happening. Possibly this is a different point of view that's not on the broadcast. Again, you're getting that kind of perspective angle on the framing. And then Bridgestone Europe is targeting that tweet out to people who are interested in one or another subject here. Maybe they're interested in tires. We know that from what they've been tweeting about. Maybe they're interested in motorcycles, but they don't happen to be following MotoGP. This video will actually find those users and all this happening at the same time this is happening on broadcast. So here's how that same kind of use can happen in a different context and in the design context. Events are a really great place for this. So you can imagine having an event where at the key moment or the climax, you're actually tweeting out the key part for people who can't attend it. So here's one from London Fashion Week. Again, using Snappy TV, giving people who can't be there the inside look, possibly using a different perspective. And I'll show you an even fresher example here in a second. Who knows what that stands for? It's a design crowd, so I figure some folks will, yeah. Internet of Things. So a really fun angle here, and here we take a little bit more of a departure even, is Twitter and objects, Twitter and stuff, Twitter and designs that are built to interact with people via their phones. So here's fun from the UK, where Alexander Wang and H&M put this big box in a square in London in anticipation of the launch of a new line. You see it's got the clock on it. It's a huge installation where they were inviting people to tweet at the box and receive a special customized message in return, which would then appear on the side of the box and on their phone. So this really great interactive experience as they're waiting, building anticipation. The interesting thing here is that I mentioned before, like time is a key element of Twitter and the real-time nature of things. And it's hard, I kind of racked my brain thinking about what would be the kind of design angle for time, but this is a really clever idea here where they're creating this sense of urgency with the timer. Another fun one from the UK is vending machines that you can actually tweet at and go pick up a good from. There are lots of different permutations of this, and I feel like it's just the very beginning of how mobile payments could work, or mobile ordering of different kinds of goods and services. Here's a fun one since we're at a light convention from the World Cup, where we worked with Rio and the World Cup organization to actually have the Christ the Redeemer statue turn the color of the flag of the team that was getting the most hits on Twitter at that particular time. So it's sort of an example of an object that can receive tweets as well. Here's a really fun example from a few years back, and this one also has some design elements in it where I'm sure you guys have all seen kind of infographics that involve tweets. This one's showing the spread of tweets along the east coast of the United States when there was an earthquake in 2011. So this is a very unusual thing for the east coast of the United States. So here you're seeing the center of it was around Washington, D.C., and you're seeing tweets, the conversation about it happening in a very short period of time as the earthquake's happening. And this here, this visualization, actually looks like a seismic reading, but those are actually tweets. That's the volume of tweets, and these are the states that the tremor, the shock wave was going down at the time. So you can see that the tweets themselves, people's reaction, they're grabbing their phone and saying, I think that was an earthquake, that's unusual, or is everyone okay? You can see how it mapped to exactly how the kind of path of the hurricane went. So we, around this time, started getting really interested in kind of Twitter and earthquakes. There's a couple different parts of the company that just got obsessed with kind of tweeting objects, and we found this earthquake meter designed by a 15-year-old at the time in Santiago, Chile, that he basically hooked a seismograph up to a Twitter account, gave it its own account here, automated everything, and so the almost 500,000 followers in Santiago, Chile, most of them I would expect would be there, can turn on mobile notifications, and their phone will literally buzz every time there's seismic activity. So it serves as kind of an early warning. They've now seen a few of these all over the world. Another fun one is the Beijing Air account. This is a pollution meter on top of the US Embassy in Beijing. One of the only Twitter accounts in China because it's on technically US soil. It actually tweets out the pollution levels regularly all throughout the day. And you can see here it says, it has all sorts of different settings. It has, unhealthy for certain groups, dangerous, a bunch of different levels. One time it created a minor little stir when a few years ago it tweeted, the pollution levels were off of the meter of what had been programmed. And it tweeted out just the words crazy bad. So whoever programmed it had put that in there as kind of a joke amongst the programmers, but I ended up actually tweeting that out. Another really fun one is tweeting animals. They're not technically tweeting animals, but this is a lifeguard service in Australia that has tagged sharks with little transmitters. So known great white sharks in the area are carrying these little transmitters on them, and then there are receivers all along the shoreline, and those receivers will actually tweet out when there's a shark in the area. This is an area that's just totally exploding, is interactive objects like this in the Internet of Things. In our efforts, when we first started working with photos and video, this is from 2011 as well, or 2012, the same year right after the earthquake on the East Coast. We thought, okay, what could we do that's kind of like an earthquake meter that we could do in the world of kind of media and sponsorships? And here's what we put together with the NBA.
Be very wary of my guy from Indiana, Paul George.
So the NBA gave the backboard, the basketball goal, itself its own Twitter account, and then had it tweet out a photo right at the time. This was kind of a trick, just an illusion, because it was being done by remote control. This was a couple of years ago, so it wasn't yet advanced enough to do it automatically. But this, again, is sort of that idea of perspective and framing the world from a different point of view for the user, and happening as it's happening on the big screen as well. So fast forward to this week, and kind of what's the modern advanced version of this. I mentioned that tweeting backboard was just kind of an illusion, sort of a trick that we made it look like it was automated. Here's something from just this week. And from here in Italy, actually from Verona. And this is a teaser tweet that Sanj from our UK office, when he was in Verona preparing for this event, tweeted out in anticipation of what was coming. And so here was what was coming. Calzedonia was having a fashion show. There were these cameras with special software attached to them all around the runway, all around the arena here. And they were programmed to respond to tweets responding to Calzedonia with TweetCam in them. And so as I was landing here in Milan yesterday, coming in on the taxi, I was checking out who was tweeting about it. And I found this one particular user who is in between the two towns. And her tweet excitedly give me more and more and more. I saw she was requesting lots of different photos. So all this is happening during the event. She's tweeting along. And here's Calzedonia's automatic response. So right away, the camera responds, takes a picture. The software adds her own username to it here to personalize it from inside the action. And so people were getting photos from all sorts of different angles inside there. Here you can see a larger view of it. When you go full screen on a photo in a tweet or a video, you can still do these tweet actions. So you can start to see the idea of like what this kind of panoramic effect of having cameras everywhere can do, particularly as the software gets better and better, and particularly around kind of events. Here you kind of see the delighted reaction she has here. From a brand point of view, this is the like ideal scenario you want. You have somebody who's delighted to be interacting with your brand. As I mentioned, I was in the taxi when all this was happening, coming from the airport, and I wanted to see if it worked for me. So you can see here the kind of the progression. You got Calzedonia saying time to tweet, but look at the timestamp on it. It's from 2 hours before I respond, tweet cam, and it says, the event's over. So that element of real time, that element of kind of time as the new scarcity is a big part of this. The event draws all the attention in on itself at that one particular moment, and that's the key moment to get people most engaged and most excited. Along those lines, how many of you have heard of Periscope or used Periscope? Anyone? So this is another, are you Periscoping right now? Okay, I got it. Not surprised. So Periscope's another video company that Twitter's acquired that is a freestanding app that you can download that lets you broadcast live from your phone to anyone who's following you. So here's Sanj, the guy we saw before from backstage. It's a little grainy, blown up. Just mobile video blown up, where he's explaining sort of what's about to happen with the tweet cam. We didn't Periscope this event itself in any kind of official way. You can imagine this is like 2 weeks since this has been out in the public, and already, if you check out the Periscope app, you can see people all over the world using these different kinds of totally live experiences. People are interacting with it, texting him, tweeting him, leaving likes on his profile. Floyd Mayweather, the boxing champion, has a big fight coming up soon, next big world championship. He just announced he's going to be doing a Periscope of his training before the fight. So the applications of this are hard to even imagine. And if you think about that point again about perspective and about the phone being this window into the world, making big things smaller, making small things bigger, and adding in that element of real time, there's all sorts of amazing experiences that you can design with these things. And I would just kind of leave you all with the challenge that, like I said, I'm not a designer. I was just mainly hoping to spark some crazy ideas here with this today and with these examples. The challenge would be, well, what does this look like for design? What is the real-time aspect of a design experience? What are the different conversational possibilities, whether with people or objects or animals? And I think that looking forward to seeing what that looks like. Thanks a lot for having me, and we'll wrap it up there. So.